Hello and welcome to this Friday edition of the World Report. I'm Arjun and Mahendran. Let's take a look at what's making headlines around the world. Bangladeshi actor Meher Afroz Shaun's family home in Jamalpur attacked and in fact set on fire after she criticized the interim government under Muhammad Yunus. Now, according to reports, the detective branch of police in Dhaka has picked up prominent actor Meher Afroz Shaun for questioning from Dhaka. Moments after it was reported that she had been arrested on sedition charges, the detective branch of the Dhaka Metropolitan Police changed its statement, saying that she has been taken into custody for questioning. Meanwhile, a group of protesters set fire to the ancestral home of Shaun in Jamalpur. They set fire to the house belonging to engineer Muhammad Ali, Shaun's father. Now, Muhammad Ali had sought an Awami League nomination in the 12th national election. Meanwhile, her mother, Begum Tahura Ali, served as an MP from the reserved seat for women from 1996 to 2001 and again from 2009 to 2014. Earlier, India slammed the destruction of the historic residence of Bangladesh founder Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and in fact said that the act of vandalism should be strongly condemned. Rahman's residence in Dhaka was destroyed by some protesters on Wednesday. My colleague Saurabh joins us for more on this developing story. Saurabh, what's the role of the interim Yunus government in the escalating violence and the attacks on critics as well as actors and people who are concerned, as we've been seeing?
Well, on the streets of Dhaka, it seems that as far as these elements are concerned, who are setting fire or, completely bulldozing a structure that was a museum for the founding father of Bangladesh, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, or setting houses of those criticizing the interim government on fire, these elements seem to be having a free run. The administration and law enforcement, conspicuous by their absence, and even if they are present, there's very little that they're doing to stop these incidents. That's one of the observations that many are saying that they're witnessing in Dhaka. The other thing is that, this is an interim government. This is not an elected government, and there are to be elections soon. And obviously, there has been a lot of concern over when these elections will be held and in what kind of circumstance and in what kind of situation, and whether there will be free and fair elections. Those are also questions, because the attack on Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's museum, a tribute to his legacy, something to which, the Indian embassy also, I beg your pardon, reacted pretty strongly. In that case also, there, of course, the Indian embassy has the Ministry of External Affairs in India has reacted pretty strongly and put out a statement on that as well. But obviously, there is a lot of anarchy and chaos and violence that's taking place. Minorities continue also to be targeted, but also critics of the interim government, including two actors that we are talking about, also facing the brunt of the power of the administration at this point for simply being critics of the current administration or regime.
Saurabh, how are human rights organizations viewing the government's response to the ongoing harassments, of critics and political opponents? What's happening on that front?
Well, this has been something that human rights organizations in Bangladesh have been flagging. And, in the aftermath of last year's revolution the overthrowing of the Sheikh Hasina government in Bangladesh, following which the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, had to flee her country, minorities in Bangladesh, specifically the Hindu community, have faced attacks. That's something that human rights bodies have flagged. The other thing is, of course, Awami League supporters, Awami League workers have also faced attacks. But now, even citizens who do not seem to be aligned with, the establishment or are critical of the establishment's role, also now are facing attacks, the two actors being examples of that. So obviously, human rights bodies are viewing this with a lot of concern and are flagging these incidents to ensure that at least there is some sort of action by the interim government when it comes to putting an end to these kind of incidents.
Well, thank you so much for that, Saurabh. And of course, we'll keep a tab on this story. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has, in fact, signed an executive order sanctioning the International Criminal Court and accusing it of illegitimate and baseless allegations targeting America and our close ally, Israel. The measures places financial and visa restrictions on individuals and their families who assist in ICC investigations of American citizens or its allies. Now, Trump signed the measure as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was visiting Washington. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Thursday said it was quote-unquote absurd to change fees to instead charge fees to the U.S. military for using the Panama Canal. His comments came after the Panamanian president Jose Raul Mulino on Thursday, in fact, denied the U.S. State Department's claim that his country had reached a deal allowing U.S. warships to transit the Panama Canal for free. Now, Mulino said he had told U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth on Wednesday that he could neither set the fees to transit the canal nor exempt anyone from them, and that he was surprised, in fact, by the U.S. State Department's statement suggesting otherwise late Wednesday. Listen in.
I'm not confused about Panama. We had conversations. I felt there were strong first steps. We have expectations we made clear in those conversations. I respect very much that Panama has a process. They're a democratically elected government. They have rules. They have laws. They're going to follow their process. But our expectations remain the same. In particular on that, I would just say that the United States has a treaty obligation to protect the Panama Canal if it comes under attack. That treaty obligation would have to be enforced by the armed forces of the United States, particularly the U.S. Navy. I find it absurd that we would have to pay fees to transit a zone that we are obligated to protect in a time of conflict.
The U.S. Senate has confirmed President Donald Trump's nominee to lead the White House Budget Office, Russell Watt, hours after Democrats staged an all-night hearing in the chamber in protest. Watt's nomination, in fact, to lead the Office of Management and Budget, or the OMB, has been controversial due to his role as an author of Project 2025. It was a wish list of conservative priorities for Trump in his second term. Democrats held the floor overnight into Thursday, delivering speeches criticizing, in fact, Watt's role in Trump's efforts to shrink the federal government. Listen.
If the chaos of the last 2 weeks is any indication of what's to come, Russell vote will be a massive liability for Donald Trump, for Republicans, and worst of all, for the country. Tonight, I will vote no, fervently, strongly, with complete conviction, and urge my colleagues to do the same.
Donald Trump has stated that no U.S. troops will be needed in Gaza as Israel will, quote-unquote, turn over the territory after the war. Now, this comes as part of Trump's plan to take over Gaza, which has met with support from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Trump's plan, in fact, involves forcing the 2 million residents of Gaza into neighboring countries and developing the area into a quote-unquote Riviera of the Middle East. However, this proposal has been criticized by Antonio Guterres. He is the Secretary General of the UN, who labeled it as ethnic cleansing, in fact. Despite the backlash, Trump has doubled down on his plan, with top U.S. officials attempting to soften his stance. The situation remains contentious, to say the least, with concerns over the potential consequences and fallouts of Trump's proposed actions.
Israeli officials say they're moving ahead with plans to encourage and help Palestinians to leave the Gaza Strip. This comes after President Donald Trump floated a controversial plan this week calling for all of Gaza's 2 million people, 2 million Palestinians, to be removed. He says the U.S. would then move into the territory, oversee it, and oversee a lengthy reconstruction process. Now, this plan has come under fierce international condemnations. Many critics say it amounts to ethnic cleansing.
Israel's defense minister has told the country's army to prepare plans to give Palestinians in Gaza the freedom to leave, as Donald Trump doubled down on his controversial proposal for the U.S. to take over and redevelop the war-torn territory. Israel Katz said Gazans could emigrate, and countries who had criticized the country's war with Hamas would be obligated to allow them to enter their territory. Meanwhile, according to reports, the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will visit Israel and Arab states in middle February, making his first trip, in fact, to the Middle East or West Asia after a widely condemned proposal by President Donald Trump to displace Palestinians in Gaza. Rubio will travel to the Munich Security Conference and then to Israel, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia from the 13th of February to the 18th of February, the senior State Department official said late Tuesday. Meanwhile, back home, a federal judge has blocked President Donald Trump's plan to push out federal employees by offering them financial incentives. The decision Thursday came hours before the midnight deadline for workers to apply for the program. A U.S. district judge in Boston, in fact, sided with several labor unions that had requested a temporary restraining order against the plan orchestrated by Trump and advisor Elon Musk. Trump is trying to downsize and reshape the federal workforce. The judge didn't express an opinion on the legality of the program, however. He scheduled a hearing for Monday and directed administration officials to extend the deadline to apply for the program until after the hearing. The White House says more than 40,000 federal workers have already agreed to resign. A line of Mexican National Guard and Army trucks rumbled along the border separating Ciudad Juarez and El Paso, Texas. They are among the first of 10,000 troops Mexico has sent to its northern frontier following threats of high tariffs being imposed on Mexican goods by U.S. President Donald Trump. Masked and armed National Guard members picked through bushes and brush running along the border barrier on the outskirts of Ciudad Juarez, pulling out ladders tucked away in trenches and pulling them onto trucks. Now, patrols were also seen in other parts of the border near Tijuana. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and his U.S. counterpart Pete Hegseth had a phone conversation, in fact, to discuss strengthening India-U.S. defense ties. This was their first call since Hegseth took office, and it comes just before PM Narendra Modi's visit to Washington. The two ministers agreed to work on a 10-year comprehensive framework to, in fact, bolster their defense partnership, focusing on areas like intelligence, logistics, operational, and industrial engagement. They also discussed expanding cooperation in advanced technology, defense industrial supply chains, interoperability, logistics, information sharing, and joint military exercises. Singh described the conversation as, in fact, excellent and tweeted that they explored ways to deepen India-US bilateral defense relationship. He also mentioned that they agreed to an ambitious agenda covering operational, intelligence, logistical, and defense industrial collaboration. A U.S. military contracted plane crashed in a rice field in the southern Philippines Thursday, killing all 4 people on board, the U.S. Embassy and Philippine officials have said. 1 American service member and 3 defense contractors were killed in the crash, the U.S. military said. The Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines confirmed the crash of a light plane in the Del Sur province. A 4th contingent of Kenyan police arrived on Thursday in Haiti to help repel violent gangs. This as officials brushed off concerns of a halt in some U.S. funding to the UN-backed mission. The 200 police officers from the East African country joined more than 600 other Kenyans already working alongside Haiti's national police as a part of multinational force boosted by soldiers and police deployed by countries including Jamaica, Guatemala, and El Salvador. The latest deployment of Kenyan police comes 2 days after the U.S. notified the United Nations that it was in fact freezing the $13.3 million stated for missions as part of a sweeping freeze on foreign assistance imposed by U.S. President Donald J. Trump. Sweden is reeling from its deadliest mass shooting, which killed at least 11 people, including the murderer, as investigators piece together what happened at an adult education center in Örebro on Tuesday. Now, Swedish police confirmed on Tuesday evening that around 10 people were killed in the shooting, which took place at noon at the Riksbergska skolan. It's an education center in Örebro, a city west of Stockholm. The shooter suspect is among the deceased, according to the police. Meanwhile, cops investigating this case described the scene on the campus of the Riksbergska Adult Education Center as chaotic and terrified, after the gunman indiscriminately opened fire against anyone who crossed his path. Various Swedish media outlets have identified the suspect as Rickard Anderson, a 35-year-old resident of Örebro who had been unemployed for nearly a decade, but there has been no official confirmation of his identity. Listen in.
Sweden has always been a very peaceful country to live in. It's not like that anymore because we get a lot of criminality these days and a lot of violence, a lot more than we used to.
It's time we slip into a short break. See you on the other side. Welcome back. You're watching The World Report on NDTV. Geeta Gopinath, the first Deputy Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, has in fact said it is too early for any precise analysis of the consequences of higher US tariffs against other countries. Gopinath told a press conference, and I quote here, it's in the interest of all countries to work together, take care of disagreements, and ensure that there is an enabling environment for international trade. She was responding to a query about the potential impact of global trade friction and threats of higher tariffs by US President Donald Trump on other countries, including Japan. And oil prices rose marginally in Asian trade on Friday, but were on track for a third straight week of decline, hurt by US President Donald Trump's renewed trade war on China, coupled with threats of tariff hikes on other countries. Brent crude futures rose 32 cents to $74.61 a barrel, but was poised to fall 2.8% this week. Meanwhile, US West Texas Intermediate crude was up 24 cents at $70.85 a barrel, down about 2.3% on a weekly basis. Amazon investors drove shares down sharply on Thursday due to weakness in the retailer's cloud computing unit and lower than expected forecasts for first quarter revenue and profit. Amazon's shares fell as much as 5% in extended trade after the fourth quarter earnings report, erasing about $90 billion worth of stock in market value and were leased down about 4.2%. Amazon's chief financial officer, Brian Olsavsky, said he expected the capital expenditure run rate for this year to be roughly the same as last year's fourth quarter, when the company spent $26.3 billion. Amazon had boosted, in fact, spending in particular to help develop artificial intelligence software. US drugstore chain Walgreens Boots Alliance has sold more shares in drug distributor Sensora for proceeds of about $300 million. The company said that it now owns a 6% stake in Sensora, trimming it down from 10% it previously held. It further said that Sensora shares worth $1.1 billion in August. Walgreens has sold about $265 million worth of shares, and Sensora, in fact, has agreed to repurchase about $50 million worth of shares from them. Tesla raised the prices of its Model X cars in the United States by $5,000 on Thursday. Now, the Model X all-wheel drive will now cost $84,990, a jump from its previous price of $79,990, the EV maker said, adding that the Plaid variant, which was priced, in fact, at $94,990, will now cost buyers $99,990, almost $100,000. Now, last December, Tesla increased the prices of its Model S cars in the US by $5,000 and hiked rates of all its models in Canada from the 1st of February. China's Xiaomi will explore ways to ramp up production capacity, CEO and founder Li Jun said on his social media account on Friday. Stay up to date. Meanwhile, Spotify and Warner Music Group have unveiled a new multi-year agreement that covers both recorded music and music publishing. WMG owns labels behind popular artists like Dua Lipa, Coldplay, and Ed Sheeran. The company said in a press release that the new deal will in fact help deliver a new fan experience, a deeper music and video catalog, further paid subscription tiers, and differentiated content bundles. China has criticized the US, India, and other countries for banning DeepSeek, a Chinese AI chatbot, claiming that these actions amount to the politicization of trade. However, these countries have raised concerns over DeepSeek's data privacy and security practices, citing potential risks of data leakage to the Chinese government. The former interpreter for baseball star Shohei Ohtani was sentenced Thursday to nearly 5 years in prison for bank and tax fraud after he stole nearly $17 million from the Los Angeles Dodgers player's bank account. API Mizuhara, who was supposed to bridge the gap between the Japanese athlete and his English-speaking teammates and fans, was sentenced to 4 years and 9 months in federal court in Santa Ana after he pled guilty last year. He was in fact ordered Thursday to pay $18 million in restitution, with nearly $17 million going to Ohtani and the remainder to the IRS. He was also sentenced to 3 years supervised release on top of the prison sentence and ordered to surrender to authorities by the 24th of March. Listen in.
We're here to discuss the conclusion of the criminal case against Ippei Mizuhara. This afternoon, a federal judge sentenced Mr. Mizuhara to 57 months in federal prison for stealing more than $17 million from Shohei Ohtani that Mr. Mizuhara used to pay gambling debts.
8 months after his last competitive match, Spanish defender Sergio Ramos will resume his illustrious career on another continent. Now, Ramos, who will turn 39 in March, will play for Monterrey of Liga MX in Mexico, where he will have a chance to, in fact, play in the next edition of the FIFA Club World Cup. The veteran who won the World Cup in South Africa 2010 has not played an official match since May of last year, when he was playing for Sevilla in the Spanish league of the La Liga. Monterrey, one of the most economically powerful clubs in Mexico, did not reveal the details of the agreement. Buffalo Bills quarterback Josh Allen and his fiancée actor Haley Steinfeld were all smiles as they posed for pictures and mingled with celebrities as they walked the red carpet before he received the league's biggest individual prize at the NFL Honors. Now, Allen has had plenty of reasons to celebrate this season. The couple posted a photo on their Instagram followers in November of Allen on one knee proposing marriage. Allen and Steinfeld were first linked in the spring of 2023, and they were photographed dining together in NYC. Steinfeld has begun attending Bills home games, and the couple hosted a Halloween party this fall, in fact. Well, that's all we have for you today. Take care and have a wonderful weekend.